Hello. All right. My name's Adam Connor. I'm a designer with MadPow. I've been there for just about 8 years. I was a designer at a financial services institution for about 9 years prior to that. And about 3 years ago, I discovered that my big interest in design was understanding how to make it work in organizations, how to get people through design projects without them wanting to kill each other by the end of it. And so I actually I focused the design process inward and learned how to design organizations and teams. And so I speak a lot around collaboration, communication topics of that nature. And it was interesting getting asked to speak here and hearing what the theme was, because I don't typically speak about IA, and I'm not going to today. But what I latched onto was the word good, and got really reflective on what the hell that word means. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk about what good means, or what it could mean, and how that affects how we work together. And so I want to kind of start from this phrase that everybody in this room should be very familiar with, because you've all probably uttered it to someone who's asked you a question on what is the best way to do X, right? This is the classic designer answer. We get asked, what's the best tool for X? What's the best design pattern for X, right? And we always have to say, well, it depends. And that's what I came up with when I was like, what the hell does good mean, right? And I was like, well, it depends, Adam. It depends. Well, what the hell does it depend on, right? When we're designing things, we know what it depends on. It takes us a while to talk about them with people, but we talk about, well, it depends on who we're designing for, right? It depends on our audience. And it depends on the goals that we want to achieve, right? And if you come to design from an experience design lens, it depends on the experience that you want to create for people, right? The things you want them to think and to feel and to do as they interact with whatever solution it is that you're creating. And when I talk about this with clients, when I talk about the solutions we're creating, the services we're designing, the topic of vision comes up almost every time. What's our vision for the thing we're trying to create? I talk to CEOs and CTOs and CIOs and everybody with a C in their name, and they all tell me about what their vision is, right? And they try to describe it like it's some place on a map somewhere that everybody should know where it is and what's there for them. But when I work with groups, when I work with teams, what I found is more often the case is that we don't all know where the hell that pin is in the map. At best, what we have is a sense of where it might be. We have this idea of what it could entail, but the future's too unknown to know exactly where the hell it is. And so in trying to work with teams to figure out, okay, well, how do we better talk about what our good is? How do we better talk about what we're trying to create? I came back to my time at school. So I studied film and animation before getting into computer science and then finding my way here somehow. I have no idea. And I remember exercises in script writing classes where we had to share our ideas for stories with our classmates, and we had to talk about the characters that we were developing. And there were whole exercises to try to take characters and put them in different situations and figure out how would this character react. Because the more you could do that with a character, the more you could take them and put them in a situation, figure out what they would do there, and then what they would do in another situation and in another one, and have those things feel consistent, the more you truly understood your character, the more you truly understood what that was meant to entail. And so in thinking about character, I started to look at examples to show you guys. Here's one from Big Hero 6. So this is about physical movement, physical design, and character design. So the animators here used their idea of character to try to explore how different characters from the film would react to this same situation, this kitchen setting, right? So that was Baymax, here's Hero. So each character has a different way of using the space, of interpreting the space, of changing their behavior based on what's around them. But they're all surrounded by the same thing. Another great example, I think, of character is the dude from The Big Lebowski, right? The dude is this very principled character. He's very laid back. He believes in kind of just letting things happen. He's very chill. And it's that character that actually creates so much of the entertainment in the film, because it's juxtaposed to these much more serious yet still absurd situations and ineptitude by the other characters in the film, hitmen, mob bosses, things like that. So when we think about character, can we apply it to our solutions? Can we apply it to the things we're creating? And I posit that we can. Here's Vimeo. Vimeo has always been all about the content and giving a platform to make really great content available to a wide audience for people that wouldn't necessarily be able to access that audience in other ways previously. It's all about the quality of content for Vimeo. Here's YouTube. Same video, but YouTube has long been about the volume of content, the amount they have. Now, these two sites have very similar features. They have a lot of the same content. Many filmmakers actually publish on both. But when you put them side by side, you can start to see how one values one thing and the other another. You can see the differences in what each organization prioritized and what they valued. And that brought me to the concept of principles, which is what I'm really here to talk about after getting to talk about film for a while, because I like to talk about film. When I talk about principles, I am not talking about this. We talk about design principles, we talk about best practices, heuristics, we talk about like, oh, you know, Gestalt principles and things like that, right? Those things that we all kind of agree are the best way to do something, right? Also, what I'm not talking about are values, tenets, and pillars. I have talked to many people who are far smarter than I will ever be about what the hell the differences are between these things, and I've gotten a different answer from every single person I've spoken to. I don't want anybody here to be like, well, is this a principle? Is this a value? Is this a tenet? And who the fuck cares, right? For the purpose of this talk, when I talk about principles, here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about directives that guide the behavior and capture the desired and most emphasized qualities or characteristics of the creation. I'm talking about what we believe good should be, could be, for whatever problem it is we are solving. I am talking about those characteristics and how they comprise the solution we're going to create. So, let's get back to the dude, because he's fun. What are the dude's principles? Right? If you listen through the movie, you can hear him utter them over and over again. They're simple things like be cool-headed, take it easy, go with the flow. The dude and his mindset have become so popular that you can become an ordained minister under a religion based around dudism. You can become an ordained Dudist priest. I am an ordained Dudist priest. It's that awesome, right? Because it's a philosophy, it's an approach, it's a mindset, it's a set of beliefs on how we interpret the world, right? I want to introduce you guys to a friend of mine, Shay Howe. Shay is the most principled individual I have ever met in my life, right? He and his friend Darby have kind of in their spare time created this product, Lead Honestly, because in their experiences working with their managers and being managers, they came to form some very significant beliefs in terms of what it means to be a good manager. First of all, they believe everyone is entitled to a good manager, right? And so they wanted to figure out, what the hell does that mean? And after talking amongst themselves and working with the people that they were leading, they built an entire product that is basically built around better questions. Better questions to have with the people you are managing on a regular basis that lead to better conversations and a stronger relationship between you and the people you lead. That's the entire genesis for this product for them. And they've gotten questions like, oh, well, if I use your product and I get these answers back, like, can I share them with my manager? Like, can this go up more levels? And Shay and Darby say no, because their belief is that if they start doing that, that is going to shift the way people respond to these questions. If they start to know that this stuff starts to thread higher and higher, that's going to change the quality of the conversation between people and their manager. And so their principles direct what they do and what they don't do with their product. I worked on a solution for Harvard Business Publishing around management training and becoming a better manager. Now, Harvard Business Publishing has an entire massive library of amazing content around different management practices and techniques, like thousands upon thousands of pages of awesome, awesome stuff. And basically, that was their curriculum. Read it. So the idea behind this redesign was, well, it can't just be about reading it anymore. It has to be about doing something with it. And so very early on in our conversations, we started to hear these words come up: shift from thinking to doing. It has to be about how you put this stuff into action. What can you put into action? How much information do you need to know in order to put something into action? And this mechanism, learn, act, reflect, started to come out of this principle. And it tailored everything that we did, from the way we structured content, to the way we presented content, to the way we designed interactions, because we believed heavily that this was what good looked like for us. I'll give you some other examples of what I think are strong design principles, right? Google's fast, every millisecond counts. Anybody remember Charmer? Right? Charmer was this basically a blue sky vision that Adaptive Path did a while back to redesign a blood glucose monitor, right? So one of their principles was wear it during sex, because they didn't want some chunky, awkward thing that would get in the way of someone living a very normal life, right? I love the one from Asana, because Asana is basically a project team management tool. It's not something you think about in terms of like personal relationships, but they have a principle around fostering productive and emotionally satisfying interpersonal dynamics, because they want to go beyond just managing what people are working on a day-to-day basis. National Public Radio, right? Their original mission statement here is a really great read. It's got things in here like, it will regard the individual differences with respect and joy rather than derision and hate. It will celebrate the human experience as infinitely varied rather than vacuous and banal. It will encourage a sense of active, constructive participation rather than the apathetic helplessness. I'm not going to say whether or not NPR is actually held to these things, but at least they said them. So where do these things come from? If we're going to define what we believe good is for us, where does all this stuff come from? Of course, it can start from the organization, right? Every organization has some kind of values or mission statement. 99% of the time, it's bullshit, right? We don't necessarily hold to it. You could try to go through any project and see where it rears its head, and it never does. But it's a good place to start. Research. Learning what your users are going through. What would make a good experience for them? What barriers do they face, right? Dana gave us a great example today when she researched kind of how people went through the voting process. How people thought it was this very sequential thing, very linear, and it's not at all, right? Research helps us understand what good could be. And then the final thing, the thing I think not enough groups do, is talk about what the hell they believe. We talk about what we believe as information architects or as interaction designers or visual designers or developers. We talk about that in terms of the mediums that we work with. What does it mean for IA to be good? What does it mean for design to be good, right? What does it mean for development to be good? Do we ever talk about what it means for it to be a good healthcare experience? A good savings experience with my money? A good educational experience? Does a team ever come together and talk about that? Or do they just talk about their respective domains? I think that needs to happen more. We need to talk about it. We need to work through it. It's going to start off really high level, and people are going to be throwing out one-word adjectives. I think the solution should be fun. I think it should be elegant. I think it should be easy to use. All of that stuff will happen, and you just have to dive through it. You have to get past it and talk about what the experience really entails, what it's really going to be. And it doesn't have to be that pin on a map. You don't have to say it's going to be this, and then this, and then this. But what are the characteristics? What does it embody? These things, if you decide to use them, principles, they're only useful if you actually use them. I've seen lots of teams go through the exercise of creating principles up front, only to never hear them ever come up in a conversation again, right? The measure of a good principle is if it helps the team discuss the decisions it has to make, if it helps them collaborate, and it actually helps them make those decisions. If your design principles don't help you do that, then they're not very good design principles. And these things will shift over time. They should shift over time because you're going to learn more. You're going to apply them to new spaces. You'll start off applying them at a very high level to information flow and sequences. And then you'll get into more detail around language and actual content that will show up in screens or on a kiosk somewhere. And as you apply them to different mediums, you'll see that they have to evolve. But not only that, you have to be ready to evolve them. I took this from Margot earlier because I think this is a great thing that we all need to be aware of. Going back to Shay and his friend Darby, they're building Lead Honestly together. It's just the two of them. And they share a lot of these principles, but they've never really documented them and put them out there. At some point, they're going to need to scale. At some point, they're going to need to bring more people in. And you have two options when this happens. You can bring in people who think very much like you and create a very insular space where you are just reaffirming your beliefs over and over and over again. You can bring in people who have different experiences. You can go out and research the problem space continuously, not just once every new project. You can learn more and challenge your beliefs and develop these things as you go. I think that's a measure of a truly mature team, a team that knows to explore the space continuously and not just try to continuously validate that they have the right solution. There's a common story that comes up whenever somebody talks about values and principles and vision and things like that, and it's about these three bricklayers. A man is walking down the street, and he sees three bricklayers working. So he goes to the first, and he says, What are you doing? He says, I'm laying bricks. Okay. He goes to the second. He says, what are you doing? Building a wall. All right. Keeps walking, gets to the third man. What are you doing? I'm building a cathedral. Now, this is supposed to be some awe-inspiring story about vision. Like, oh my God, a cathedral. So great. Yes, vision is amazing. I hear this story and I wonder why. Why bricks? Why a wall? Why a cathedral? When you can answer why something is good, when you can answer why it's the right choice, and you can do that together with your team, then you know you have a path towards whatever vision you're going to work towards. Design principles direct action to achieve vision. So when you work with your teams, what I'd encourage you all to do the next time you get together is step back and talk about what you believe is really important in the experiences you create. Thank you.